Well, Red Bull, what a resurgence for Red Bull. And we've got to remember it was exactly 12 months ago that Red Bull were basically saying, enough of Renault, we want nothing more to do with them, the engine's rubbish, they'll never ever win a race again, we're going to find a new supplier. 12 months on, no mention of Renault at all, funnly enough. Winning Grand Prix
yes.
again.
Well, they've certainly kissed and made up with Renault in the past 12 months, haven't they?
Yeah. I mean, what a job they've done. And we shouldn't underplay, I think, the job Renault have done. For a while, they'd picked up on reliability. Then they picked up on throttle response and general feel for the car in race situations. And now they got an engine that isn't too bad in a straight line in terms of sheer power. You got to say that.
No, it's, I mean, I think we were all expecting Renault to have a very slow start to the season. This was all the talk was, oh, come the Canadian Grand Prix, the big upgrade, the engine's going to be great. But you could see the performance was there, and particularly when we used Toro Rosso as a yardstick with a year-old engine, which was a year-old, very good engine. Suddenly, the factory Red Bull car was easily able to outpace it on the straights, which gave us that first hint that Renault had made a huge jump over the Windsor in terms of just sheer power output, but at the same time getting the fuel economy, the drivability, the reliability, all right as well. So now that's a very competitive engine. It probably is a little bit shy of Ferrari and Mercedes, but that's not to say that that's where Renault are worried about where they are, because typically the Renault engine over the years has never been the most powerful engine out there. They've never gone for the big figures, they've never gone for super fast cars in a straight line, but developed the whole package to get the lap time out of the engine. And we're certainly working with people like Red Bull that really understand how to, not just to get a car around a lap quickly, but also how to get it around during the race. So it's not all about potentially straight line speed. It's about managing the tyres and managing the whole package to get the performance when. And
you use the word package. Haven't they done overall? Hasn't it been a great job at Red Bull Renault with the packaging of that car as well?
When you look at the packaging and you start to look at the aero detail, if you put the Red Bull and the Mercedes next to each other, their approaches are so very different. The Mercedes is very complicated. Lots of this micro detail of fins and slots and serrations, but you look at the Red Bull and it's almost organic. It's like it doesn't use lots of sharp surfaces to produce the aero effect they want. It's all very smooth. It's almost like a sea-washed pebble. It's just very smooth and streamlined. And they're getting a very similar chassis performance. I mean, if you could ever split the two apart and actually see the contribution to lap time of the chassis, I imagine you would see that the Mercedes and the Red Bull are almost equal. I think maybe that the difference is still a little bit in the power unit, but and obviously Mercedes have got the whole package put together. But the Red Bull really have been very impressive. If we remember, just back in 2014, it was odd to say that the Red Bull chassis was dreadful at the beginning of the season. It took them time to recover. Obviously, even after 2013, where they had that sort of championship, and then into 2014, they'd lost lots of performance from the chassis. They've recovered from that. They've recovered from the problems with Renault. And now they are the people chasing Mercedes and pressuring, arguably, Mercedes during the race, which is obviously where their performance becomes much closer, I think, in quali. Clearly, Mercedes is out there. So Red Bull have done it.
The Red Bull will be quick around Suzuka. There's no question about that.
There's no question. I mean, it's not quite so power sensitive.
Yeah.
But in terms of handling, it'll be very close. And depending on the weather, tyre performance will come into it during the race.
And recent aero developments on the Red Bull? Can you sum those up?
I mean, when we contrast the Mercedes and the Red Bull, Mercedes have thrown quite a lot of parts at the car this year. When we look at the Red Bull from the beginning of the season to now, you could probably place two photos of them together and it would be very few people that would pick out the changes. So the changes have been very subtle. Some little bits around the front wing, around the turning vanes, but nothing that you could point to and go, well, that's their big step for this weekend. And speaking to some of the engineers at Red Bull, they say, well, some of the updates we've got, these parts are constantly changing, but the difference between them, you can only tell when you get the CAD drawings and you overlay one from the other and you can see a surface is a bit more curvy or a bit thicker or a bit longer. So they've been working hard, but it's just not evident. And it's frustrating for me that I've not had a chance to redraw the Red Bull very much this year because there have been so few parts on there. As I say, really just details around the front wing.